An American strike aircraft goes down near Iran, and one missing airman seems to disappear into bare rock. Then officials suggest a secret system heard a heartbeat where cameras, drones, and radars could not. They called the capability Ghost Murmur, and the story exploded across the internet almost overnight. But the deeper you look, the stranger this case becomes. Because the rescue appears real, while the miracle technology behind it may be anything but. This is the true story of the Ghost Murmur mystery and why experts are pushing back. In early April 2026, a U.S. F-15E Strike Eagle was reportedly shot down during a covert mission tied to Iran. 2 crew members ejected, and the pilot was recovered quickly, but the second airman vanished into hostile terrain. That missing officer was publicly identified only by the call sign Dude 44 Bravo. The landscape was a nightmare for rescuers. Steep ridges, broken cliffs, deep shadows, and almost no safe landing zones. Enemy radar, radio intercepts, and mobile anti-air threats meant every minute of delay increased the danger. If Iranian forces reached him first, the United States could face a military and political crisis within hours. So Washington launched an intense recovery effort, pulling in aircraft, drones, and classified intelligence support. According to reporting, the search window was brutal, and the risk of escalation was very real. Then came the headline-grabbing claim. The CIA had quietly deployed a system known as Ghost Murmur. Officials described it as a breakthrough sensor that could detect the biological signature of a hidden human. In the most dramatic retelling, it was said to hear a heartbeat from roughly 40 miles away. The suggestion was astonishing because ordinary drones, optics, and thermal cameras struggle badly in rough mountain terrain. Even more astonishing, the story implied the target could be found without a radio call, flare, or moving signal. That is exactly why the rescue story spread so fast, because it sounded like science fiction delivered in real time. CIA Director John Ratcliffe publicly celebrated the operation and compared the search to finding a grain of sand in a desert. President Trump also praised the mission, calling the recovery a showcase of American power and ingenuity. Media coverage quickly amplified the classified mystique, and Ghost Murmur became the star of the story. But once the first wave of excitement passed, scientists started asking a much harder question. Could a fielded military system really isolate one human heartbeat across miles of mountains, engines, wind, and electronic noise? Supporters pointed to quantum magnetometry, a real area of research that measures tiny magnetic fields with extreme sensitivity. One version uses diamonds with nitrogen vacancy centers, microscopic defects that respond to magnetic changes. When lasers and microwaves interact with those diamond defects, the sensor can translate invisible magnetic shifts into readable data. In laboratories, that approach has shown promise for ultra-precise sensing, navigation, and even medical measurements. Researchers have also explored magnetocardiography, which means detecting the faint magnetic field produced by a beating heart. So the basic science is not imaginary, and that fact gave the Ghost Murmur story instant credibility. But moving from a controlled lab to a battlefield is where the claim becomes far more difficult. A human heartbeat creates an incredibly weak magnetic signal, and the strength drops sharply with distance. Mountains do not help because the sensor still has to separate that tiny signal from overwhelming background interference. Helicopters, vehicles, radios, power systems, geology, and even the Earth's own magnetic field all add noise. And if the sensor is on an aircraft, the platform itself creates even more motion and vibration problems. That is why several experts argued the 40-mile heartbeat claim was wildly overstated, if not physically impossible. Some analysts said a practical range would be far shorter, assuming the system could work operationally at all. Others suggested Ghost Murmur may be a real research effort whose capabilities were exaggerated for dramatic effect.
There is another reason for skepticism, because reporting also highlighted a far less exotic explanation for the rescue. Modern U.S. aircrew already carry survival equipment designed specifically for exactly this kind of emergency.
One important tool is the Combat Survivor Evader Locator, or CSEL, a secure rescue beacon. CSEL can transmit location and identity data, support encrypted communication, and help friendly forces home in on a survivor. That means rescuers may not have needed a miracle heartbeat sensor to narrow the search area. Instead, they may have used a mix of beacon data, intelligence feeds, airborne surveillance, and old-fashioned search tactics. In other words, Ghost Murmur may have helped, but it may not have been the hero the headlines suggested. That distinction matters because secret technology stories often grow larger after a successful mission. A dramatic name, a classified hint, and a grateful administration can turn partial truth into legend very quickly. And once the internet adds the word quantum to the plot, the story almost markets itself. What does seem clear is that the rescue itself was intense, fast, and operationally complex. Reports described aircraft scanning the area, electronic warfare support, and helicopters or tilt-rotor assets moving into danger. Search crews had to balance speed against exposure, because hovering too long could invite hostile fire. The terrain was so severe that even spotting a motionless person from the air would have been difficult. For the missing airmen, survival also meant staying hidden, conserving energy, and avoiding enemy patrols. That alone makes the recovery impressive, regardless of how much Ghost Murmur actually contributed. It also explains why officials may have preferred a vague public narrative instead of a technical one. If the real method involved standard rescue gear, classified intelligence, or partner support, silence would make sense. If Ghost Murmur was involved, officials still may want adversaries guessing about what the system can really do. Either way, ambiguity can be useful, especially when deterrence and propaganda overlap. And that is where this story becomes bigger than one rescue. The legend of Ghost Murmur feeds a broader message that the United States can find you, even when the battlefield says otherwise. For allies, that message promises extraordinary rescue capability. For enemies, it plants doubt about whether concealment, terrain, or distance can still offer protection. For the public, it delivers the perfect modern thriller: secret physics, covert warfare, and a missing man found against impossible odds. But compelling stories are not the same as verified science. As of late April 2026, there is still no public technical evidence proving the sensational 40-mile heartbeat claim. What we do have are official celebratory statements, media reports, real quantum sensing research, and serious expert skepticism. That leaves Ghost Murmur in a fascinating gray zone between breakthrough, exaggeration, and strategic myth-making. And sometimes that gray zone is exactly where intelligence agencies want a story to live. Because uncertainty can protect methods, intimidate rivals, and keep the public focused on the miracle instead of the mechanics. So was Ghost Murmur the future of warfare, or just the most cinematic explanation for a well-executed rescue? Right now, the honest answer is that the rescue appears real, but the legend around the sensor remains unproven. And that may be the most revealing part of all. In modern conflict, the line between classified capability and carefully managed narrative is often as important as the weapon itself.